Hi, this is Carla Arndt. Do you have a handy quilter or a baby lock or even a brother sit-down machine with a TruStitch Stitch Regulator and you want to move it to a frame, but you don't know how to attach that stitch regulator? Well, then this presentation is for you. I like to start this by thinking of the puck for your stitch regulator as a computer mouse. It's just really an optical computer mouse. It has the optical spot on the bottom and an on and off switch. And you know, if you've ever used an optical mouse, that you need to have it on a table. While you move it around, it senses it. If you hold it up in the air, it's not going to work. So let's go about this whole project thinking of it that way. And my apologies that my puck looks really dirty. I didn't realize until I was done and took all these pictures that I had gotten pencil all over my fingers and had smeared it on my puck. The supplies needed are mostly what you have in your house, and the rest will cost you just a few dollars. You'll need one or more sheets of poster board, a scissors that you're willing to cut paper with, some kind of twisties or maybe zip ties. Obviously, you'll need your puck. You don't need the magnet part on top of it. You'll need some tape of some kind. I have both of these in my sewing room. You'll need a ruler to make a straight edge and do some cutting, and a pencil, of course. And then some stick-on Velcro or command strips are really handy. They don't need to be this heavy weight, but they are very handy for attaching things later. Now let's prepare our frame itself. I have a Q-Zone Hoop Pro, which already has the table for pantographs. However, if you have something like this, you may notice that it's very rough. And I don't think that that computer mouse idea is going to work on such a rough surface. So to make mine smooth, all I did is cut some pieces of poster board to fit, and they don't even have to fit that perfectly. You'll see mine has about an inch on the edge I didn't even cover because your machine isn't going to go that far. And I did tape it together. It took me 2 sheets, and I taped it together on the back side so they just wouldn't ever have a gap between. If you don't have a table, you're going to have to figure out how to make one, how to fit it there. It would depend on the brand of your frame itself. One idea I had was to use the foam poster boards because they're sturdy enough. They already have a smooth surface, and I would think you could cut those in a fashion that would be able to fit. You'll have to figure out how to attach them, but doing something like that would give you a table. The next thing is to connect the regulator. Now, the connections themselves are the same connections you've always used on your machine. It's just that this box that has the regulator can't be setting off on the side somewhere while you're doing your stitching. So what I did was I took some Velcro. In my case, I used the command strip kind, and I attached it right to the back of my machine. My machine happens to be a Baby Lock Tiara 2. I chose to put it in the orientation it is because I was thinking, well, the cables go down, that seems to make sense. However, I did have a couple instances of gravity taking over and my connections becoming loose. And when I realized that my stitch regulator wasn't working, it did take me a bit to discover that my cables just needed to be pushed in again. So orientate it however you want. Keep that in mind though when you're sticking it on. The next thing is to get these extra cords up and out of the way. I use zip ties on mine. I just loop them around, nothing fancy, and zip tied them up. When you are done, if you look at the picture on the right, I have 3 cords that are still hanging over. One cord is the power cord for the machine. The other cord is the power cord for the TruStitch Stitch Regulator, and the other one is the charging cord for the puck itself. So those should be the only 3 cords that you have left loose. Next is to attach the foot control somewhere. When I'm doing my long arm stitching, I don't use the foot control at all, but it needs to be connected to the stitch regulator. So to get mine again up and out of the way, I found a spot on my machine where I could just stick it that I wasn't using. It happens to be the second spool holder pin. And I just twisted my cable around the arm and stuck it between there. I discovered as I was stitching that sometimes it would vibrate and it would fall. Therefore, I used again another command strip so that it was attached securely. Now we're going to make the sling for the puck. The picture on the right shows a bottoms up view of what the finished product will look like. It's basically a strip of poster board that will be attached. I like to attach it in a little groove around the puck, and then we'll attach it to the carriage itself so that the puck can move when the machine moves. The first step is to cut a strip of poster board that will be long enough to go from one side of the carriage to the other. In my case, I'm using the Grace G series carriage for my machine because I had to buy the extra carriage so that my non-Grace machine would fit on the frame itself. And in my case, after I was done, the strip was 20 by 40. 20 I know is a little too long, but this gives us the ability to trim it down once we know exactly the length we need. And the 4 inches wide is just enough so that my puck can fit on it, and there's some extra on each side just to make it strong and secure. And speaking of strong and secure, don't bend your poster board. Keep it nice and straight. So don't do a fold in half type thing to find the center or anything like that. We want it as strong as possible. So I happen to know that the size I need for the hole for my puck to be around the top groove is going to be 2 7/8 inches. But I do not have the ability to cut a circle. I don't have any type of circle cutter in my house, and everything round in my kitchen seemed to be the wrong size. So the easiest way that I did it was to take the puck, find the center of that poster board strip, which would be 10 inches in my case. And again, don't bend the poster board, just measure it out. Put the puck about over the center of that. We don't have to be 100% exact, and trace around it. Now, I know that a scant 1/4 inch all the way around is going to be about the right size. So I literally just took a ruler and drew around that. You can see I made some dots and then I connected them. I'm then going to cut that hole. I will cut through one side of it, right through the poster board side. We'll tape it back together just because it's so much easier to cut that circle with one side cut than to try to punch a hole in it and then probably bend the poster board, which we don't want to do. So I do have a picture here of that slot I've been talking about at the top of my puck. I really want that poster board to fit right into there. And in fact, the poster board I had was the right thickness that it kind of even snapped right into that spot. Now, you're going to need to trim that circle until it fits really well. You'll see in the middle photo that my hole is not big enough. So after that, I tried it on basically, and I cut it down until I got to the right photo. And then I taped that slice that I had made to make the circle. Make sure that's nice and secure. Now the fun part is to actually attach this sling with the puck in it to the machine. And really you're attaching it to the carriage. As the carriage moves, You want to be able to have the puck move left and right and forward and back, and always be on that table surface. So when I tested this out to make sure that the puck could still be on the table surface, it was about, and I didn't measure this out, you don't have to be that exact, about an inch in front of my carriage wheels was really the optimum spot to put it. I bent over, now this is where you can bent over the poster board and just taped it down temporarily. And I did this on both sides until I could test it. Now, I had a video of my testing, but I can't get it to play in this recording. So here's an example of incorrect alignment. And I think you can even see in this case that there's too much poster board. It's just too long. Has too much slack. So when I would move my carriage left and right as I'm doing this test, the puck wouldn't move right away with the machine and the carriage. It would wait a bit and then it would take off. And obviously you're not going to get nicely regulated stitches if that puck isn't moving right with the carriage. So I trimmed the ends down a little bit and did another test. That's why we temporarily did the taping, and I had a video again of correct alignment, but you can see, even though it's offset a little bit, that my puck is now much more even. It doesn't have a lot of slack on the sling, and as I would move it forward and back and left and right, that puck moved right away when the carriage moved. Now, make sure your sling isn't too short. If your puck is lifting off the surface of the table, you're also not going to get good optical readings. This is one of those steps that just takes a little playing around with. Trim it down, trim it on both sides to make it even so that your puck is about in the middle is where it should lie. I didn't do extra measurements to make it perfect. The puck is big enough and heavy enough that it will actually sit and move appropriately if you've got the length correctly, even if it's not totally centered. And then the last step, after, of course, I've taped those down now more permanently instead of those two little blue pieces of painter's tape, I actually taped it down very securely, is to be able to plug in the charger. Now, I like to turn the puck in that sling so that the access to the charging port is to the back. Maybe on your machine in your carriage, it's easier to slip your hand in when it's in a different location, but mine was it's in the back. Yes, you can drag that cord around while you're stitching and it will work, but it does have some drag and your regulation may not be quite as good. So I would recommend charging it up, and when you want to go to use it, unplug it, put that cord now just through some of those loops you were making with your other cords so that it's up and out of the way. And then, of course, to turn your puck on and off, you can slip your hand under and just snap the on and off switch. And that's it. Congratulations. You now can use your TruStitch Stitch Regulator on a quilting frame. You don't need to buy a new machine. You don't need to get a lot of extra supplies. You can probably do this with less than $5 of poster board and some supplies around your house. Happy quilting.